For the final time of 2018, we're going to bring you some sports knowledge in an average way with your average guys. Eric and Ty, welcome to the show. It's Average Sports. Thanks for tuning in. What's up, Eric? And a congratulations to you, by the way, buddy.
Dude, we are here. We've made it to the end of the year. I'm very, very excited for this episode.
This is episode 26.
This completes our 1 year.
Yes.
Yes, it does. It's not officially on the way that we title our episodes, but yes, we have done 26 episodes this year. So congratulations to you too, Ty. Average Sports for the win. We did it, guys.
And
Thank you for being on this journey with us.
Yeah, and we have season 2 already mapped out, so we are going to be back in just a few more weeks. But that we'll talk about a little later. Right now, we got some stuff to catch you up on, and one thing, though, we're not talking about is fantasy time. Playoffs have been happening. A lot of people eliminated, myself included. I don't really want to talk about it, especially how bad some guys were.
Yeah, the big name players that you thought, Leonard Fournette, any of the Rams players, Antonio Brown, Zach Ertz, your big names, they were awful for you. So a lot of top teams went down this week. So we're skipping on next topic.
Moving on. So the Browns looked pretty bad a couple weeks ago. Well, they won one, then they lost, and they just looked like the normal Browns. But then they came back and did some damage. So they have a 5th win. Congrats to you. Again,
Thank you very much for congratulating me on my victory and our bet. And I'm well on my way to my other one. I don't think it's even possible that the Cowboys could finish outside the top 10 for overall scoring defense. They're most likely going to finish.
That doesn't mean they're going to do anything in the top
playoffs.
3. Yeah, well, I have a 6-pack waiting for you. The Bears, I don't know, did you see that game, though, Sunday night? It wasn't a very entertaining game because it was very low scoring. But the Bears looked for real standing up against L.A.
Yeah, that defense looks good.
Yeah.
I mean, they've looked good all season, but in particular against a very, very tough offensive opponent, they look good.
Lastly, the Miami game. Yeah, final play.
The miracle in Miami.
Oh,
my God, what a crazy play.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable. And I mean, is there anything better than watching an old Gronkowski? God, he looks like he's 95 years old trying to play safety right there.
Yeah, I liked
it. Was embarrassing.
Last effort. Well, and it's all good fun, too, because they have all on that team, or New England, there's so many of those players involved, and that whole franchise, they've had their moment in the sun several times over. So to see at least one game where they just lose it in a blundering fashion like that, I think is pretty satisfying.
I mean, one of my favorite things is, now that we live in the age of social media, is all the reaction of Patriot fans around the world, because...
Yeah, I didn't see it.
Yeah, they're pretty great, man. Just go to NFL memes and they will provide you with plenty of reaction from Patriot fans. Right. It's the world's greatest thing ever.
Hey, well, real quick, a couple of headlines on baseball side of things, because it's already winter camp time.
Hot stove, baby.
Yeah, real quick, Paul Goldschmidt. How about that trade going to St. Louis? I think that's already one of the biggest deals in MLB on what's happening. You like the move?
I love the move for the Cardinals. They gave up Weaver and Carson Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
I'm okay with both of those. I know they gave up more than that, but those are the names that are really involved there. Carson Kelly was never going to play here with them re-signing Yachty. He's just wasting away.
Yeah,
and they needed to trade him and get him off the books because they have someone else in the system that's going to be coming up that's going to be just fine.
Yeah,
but Yachty's going to be playing another 2-3 years with the Cardinals, and you can't use Carson Kelly. And then Weaver, I'm fine with that. He was very up and down. He was never consistent enough. And quite frankly, there's plenty of pitching depth in this organization to get rid of Weaver and Carson Kelly to then bring in Paul Goldschmidt. A number 3 bat that you really, really desperately needed is fantastic move by the Cardinals. So kudos to them.
I also think it was interesting to see McCutchen move on to another team after thinking it might play out well in San Francisco. Well, he's heading from the West Coast to the East Coast in the Phillies organization.
No, he was already on the East Coast because he finished the year in New York.
You're right. I forgot about that. He was up in New York. So he
was traded.
Yeah. All right.
Well, but he disappeared. So you can kind of still see how he was still on the West Coast.
Right.
It's an interesting move. When you think about it, because the Phillies have been a team that has been talked about all season, that they're going to spend the money, that they're going to, as their GM said, we're looking to spend a little stupid something along those lines about trying to get Manny Machado or Bryce Harper, and signing an outfielder may say that they're not interested in Harper, or really it might say that, hey, if we don't get Harper, we need to have a backup plan.
Right.
And I think maybe McCutchen might be the backup plan, to be honest.
Or someone talked them off the ledge a little bit, because that is a steep price tag. You're going to have to, it is stupid spending.
Yeah.
All right, well,
Agreed.
we digress from, we will, for our first episode of Season 2, get into the hot stove stuff. We'll really talk about what else is happening across all leagues in professional sports. But for our season ender, we wanted to talk about something that hasn't been around in a while. 3 little letters that haven't been uttered since the turn of the millennium. And we're talking about the return of what was just something you completely forgot about. I hadn't thought about it for a long time until heard the news. The XFL, Extreme Football League, headed by the wrestling tycoon McMahon. The XFL's returning. Eric, what?
It's coming back, man.
It's coming back.
I remember when it came out in 2000 that it was, they really played on the extreme and, being hard-hitting and being very forceful and just unforgiving. And it didn't work out well for them. It was
lasted one season. Yeah.
It lasted one season. There's a beautiful 30 for 30 out there. If you have not seen it, please go watch that 30 for 30 about the original XFL and what happened with them coming into their own and completely falling apart within one season and what really happened. And now coming back into the play, it does seem to be a little bit different. It does seem to be a little bit more professional. We have played on the websites a little bit. There are 8 teams, including one. The very first team that was announced is the only team that does not also have an NFL counterpart in the same city, which is here in St. Louis.
Well, so let's talk about that. There are 8 teams total to start off this entire league. So you got Dallas, Houston, LA, New York, St. Louis, Seattle, Tampa Bay, and Washington, D.C. are all going to reboot this football reimagine, as they really brand this across the entire website. If you want to see a treat, go to xfl.com. It's an interesting site, to say the least, I think. They are doing what they can, but I think you did call it right. There's fewer gimmicks about this than when the league had first started, and it is a little bit more professional. But you know what I see when I look at this with these primary colors all over the place? It screams The Replacements. Remember that movie with all these fake football teams? Because it's out of Hollywood. But to me, none of this looks legitimate. It looks Hollywood to me. But what else should you expect from a guy who created an empire of wrestling? Right? I think that's what we're going to kind of see. It'll be tough to really believe that any of these games are legitimate, that there aren't kind of pre-scripted. So I feel like it would be a tough sell. While guys are still really hitting themselves. I don't know. Maybe they're not, though. Maybe they practice on how to make a hit look entertaining, but also keep yourself safe.
You think that the XFL is just going to be like recruiting their WWE stars to play? Basically,
I bet they would tout that they have restrictions against performance-enhancing drugs, but on the back end, who knows what happens behind the curtain? And they get these guys who are going to be big and mean, but you'll have your heroes and your heels and the teams that are going to come out and look like the nemesis. And, we have this big matchup against Houston and LA, but everyone's been hating LA this year. But they're the underdog. I don't know. They're going to create these storylines.
That's how I figured it the very first time. They went real unprofessional the first time.
They did.
And they just did not know what they were doing. And I think this time it's going to be a little bit different. It's going to be very similar as far as what we see. It's still going to be 11 on 11. It's going to be 100-yard field, 10-yard end zones, 4 downs to get the 10 yards. It's going to be similar rules there. However, some of the things, reading through this website that they're really, really going to focus on is speed of play.
Yeah. 2-hour game time total. 2 hours.
Yeah. So they're really trying to fix and increase an in-game rhythm and a flow to give us the action that we want and allow us to take in their games and their flow of what's going on inside the action, and kind of push away the commercial breaks and the halftime breaks and all that extra stuff that doesn't really need to, in their opinion, be there. So they are really, taking into consideration those kinds of things. And I'm interested to see how it plays. One of the things that you and I talked about, and even myself with some other people, is, what's kind of an over-under for the league if it's going to last. And I think you and I hit on a good point there. We came down to, what do we say, 3.5 years?
I could give it 3 seasons. Because what coming off of back in 2000, 2001, and the whole season's over, that is a lot of capital that you lost. So you would have to try and get that second season in. It would have to be a real bust year, underperforming year, to just say, oh, we can't do a second season. Because the amount of money that goes into these venues to play, I know I read an article that St. Louis is getting at the Dome $25,000 a game. It may not sound like much, but that's still $25,000 to go have something that you don't necessarily have an audience to go see yet. And you also have all the overhead of how many guys are on each team, plus the staff and the marketing that's going into it. I think that there's going to be millions going into it. I think it's around $100 million that Vince McMahon himself is funding to get this league off the ground. So I think that's enough money, safe to say, to get into a second or maybe third season. Now, if it's still underperforming and not going anywhere, well, I don't think you can just keep it going by. I mean, you can only hemorrhage so much. But that is one thing that's interesting to me, that Vince McMahon himself is the one who, this is his baby now without really any other investors. It's his money, his league, and we'll see where it goes. I think it's going to be, I don't know how much already I want to see it. I'm just curious if it actually works. I don't care to watch it.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a lot of scrutiny on this league. There's going to be a lot of people that are going to have it under a fine-tooth comb and a microscope, per se, especially because of the way it performed the very first time. And I think there's going to be a lot of criticism on Vince McMahon to stay out of football operations, because a lot of people feel that that's what sunk it the first time.
Right.
Was him getting overly involved with it. So it's going to be interesting to see. And I am interested, as far as it being here in St. Louis, to potentially go enjoy one game. I don't know that I would ever become a season ticket holder for something like this, but I think in a market also like St. Louis, this was a perfect place for them to go after they had their team completely ripped away from them in a
I agree. St. Louis is a good market to bring back some football, as well as any other city. I do think it's interesting to focus on these other cities with NFL teams, and they're going to share the same venues. The NFL players are going to be playing on the same ground as these XFL guys, which we don't even know what that looks like. And and three of that's going to cause some stadiums. Kind of controversy. Yeah. Well, one other quick thing I want to note: I came across that any player with a criminal record is precluded from playing, and players won't receive a forum to take personal stance on social issues on playing field. That's the XFL. I don't know how more extreme you can get.
Extreme opinions from up above.
Yeah. So jumping from fantasy into reality on what's coming up, but it is kind of related in a way, because it is a team that doesn't exist. What are we talking about? The NHL is getting a new team. Have you heard about this? Seattle is getting a team. I don't know what they're called yet. I heard maybe Kraken.
There's a couple names out there, and we actually talked about this. There was an episode earlier in the year where we talked about sports teams going to different markets. Now, however, we did have the premise that we couldn't pick a city that already had a professional franchise, because we actually both said Seattle for basketball and for hockey.
Yes.
On that episode, but we went in a different direction of cities that didn't have an actual professional team.